All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video I'm making a special video for one of my favorite subscribers, Phenomenal Show, who shared with me some information about Jake Paul and Canelo Alvarez and a fight that they had agreed to have, which apparently Canelo reneged on and went to do a 4-fight deal with Turki. Is this a situation where Jake Paul did snap off, has the ability to sue and force Canelo Alvarez to do something or pay a price for jumping out of this fight? Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. Let me first off say, Jake Paul went off on Canelo Alvarez and said that Canelo Alvarez signed a contract to fight him and that they were set to have a fight in May, but Canelo Alvarez reneged on it and showed proof, or some evidence, let me say, showed some evidence that there was a signed agreement between the two. So the question was presented whether or not and why Canelo can get out of that. First, let me say this. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you to everybody that's new to the channel. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. And if you've been around a long time, thank you very much for your continued support for the channel. But let's get into this. First, I'm happy that this fight between Jake Paul and Canelo Alvarez is not taking place. I didn't think that it would take place. Not saying that it couldn't have taken place, because pretty much every Jake Paul with Mike Tyson, I didn't think that would happen either. So, hey, as far as Jake Paul going, I've been dead wrong on a couple of occasions about Jake Paul having fights. Actually one occasion with Jake Paul having a fight. So, hey man, I could be wrong. This thing could pop off and we could do it. We got Francis Ngannou versus Tyson Fury. That's the fight that I didn't think was going to happen. I was like, how are they going to actually fight Francis Ngannou? And they did it. So those type of Sideshow Bob fights have been happening. But let me say, first and foremost, I'm happy that Canelo Alvarez is not fighting Jake Paul. I do think Jake Paul, however, is very good for boxing. I just, not in love with that fight. But to answer the question, Jake Paul showed some signatures on what appears to be an agreement. But without actually knowing what is written there, you don't really know what he committed to doing. It may have just been a non-binding term sheet. It may have where they say, okay, hey, we're kind of considering this. Yeah, let's have a preliminary negotiation. And it could just be something that Canelo Alvarez was like, okay, yeah, pitch me it. And he could have signed something, and that thing could have been related to confidentiality. Who knows what that was, because you don't get to actually see what it is and read it for yourself. That said, let's assume that it was an agreement for a bout. Well, even if it was an agreement for a bout with a date, it's going to be tough to get somebody to enforce that particular fight and shove it down Canelo Alvarez's throat to make him do it. I don't know what damages Jake Paul could have suffered. The question is, could he have been in violation of the contract and breached the contract? Let's just assume, yeah, he breached the contract. But in the law, there is something called no harm, no foul, which means if you don't, and by that I mean if you don't have damages, if you can't show how you were harmed in some concrete way by the breach of that contract, there's nothing really a court can do for you, right? So what did Jake Paul suffer? And I don't know. Maybe he did. There was supposed to be an announcement, they said, so maybe there were some expenses around the formation of the documents. Maybe there was, some things that they did expectations and some money that they spent in expectations of the announcement, and that they reasonably relied on Canelo Alvarez's signature to incur the expenses, so you may be able to get him there. Who knows, man? But because again, you have to see the agreement. But at the end of the day, I mean, I don't think Jake Paul should sue Canelo Alvarez for that. Until that deal is actually done, the deal isn't done until you actually know that you have that thing done and you've got it announced and you guys are talking about the fight. But anyway, I'm happy that the fight is not taking place. I don't really care at this point in time what Canelo Alvarez does with his career, to tell you the truth. I do not foresee him fighting David Benavidez, and David Benavidez is the guy that I want to see him fight, and I think many boxing fans want to see Canelo fight. So Canelo Alvarez tucked over with Turki Al-Sheikh for 4 fights. What's the likelihood of us ever getting that? And honestly, man, I don't know what fights you're really going to get out of Turki Al-Sheikh. William Skull, I know, is one for the IBF. I think there's IBF with William Skull. You know, I'll take the fight because I guess it's another chance to be a 2-time undisputed champion for Canelo Alvarez. And again, like, I'm not in the business of dogging out any particular fight. I think William Skull obviously is not as big an event as Canelo Alvarez fighting Jake Paul. So if you're looking for like the spectacle of it, no, Jake Paul and Canelo Alvarez is a much bigger fight. And I do think that it's probably true that Jake Paul versus Canelo Alvarez is the biggest fight that Canelo Alvarez could make. But again, I don't think that's something where anybody's really thinking that it's a very serious fight. Jake Paul just got done fighting at heavyweight. Jake Paul is not a real fighter, and I'm sure they would pay, Canelo and those guys would make a lot of money doing that, but it would look like such a cash grab that I think at the end of the day it would affect people's perception of them. But then again, who knows? Because Canelo Alvarez has done a bunch of stuff that I would have thought would have affected people's perspective of him, but perception of him. But shoot, still, he continues to do big numbers. Jake Paul, again, like I doubt very much he does anything. Even in the conversation that I heard him have, he even said, just, okay, going back to your boss, Turki Al-Sheikh, cracked a joke about the bump on Canelo Alvarez's lip. But, to me, what can I say? If Canelo Alvarez did jump out of that to do something, if that was the fight he was supposed to have, I don't mind him not doing that. On the other side of it, of the 4-fight deal, I think Jamal Charlo was supposed to be one of the options for the first fight. I think it's maybe even be William Skull or Jamal Charlo. Al Heyman, speaking to the disloyalty part about Canelo Alvarez and Al Heyman, man, look, Canelo Alvarez ain't been loyal to nobody, and Al Heyman ain't no fool. This is not the first time Al Heyman did fights with him, and then Canelo goes off and fights somebody else, Anyway, that's my take on the matter. Please let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Deuces.